It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show, only on Secular Media Network.
Buongiorno tutti. This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. This is show number 165, and we're in the middle of spring in 2016, in case you happen to catch this in archives. We have got a lot going on, including a really long interview with Matt Dillahunty coming up. He is on the Atheist Experience show. He is working on publishing a book, and of course he has his own video channel, but we'll talk about all of that a little later. One of the things I want to touch now is I regularly recommend that people get a CPA. This is someone that can help you do your taxes. It can cost you anywhere from $50 to a couple $100 for simple taxes, especially if you're in a big town. It might be a little bit more. And it can go up from there if your taxes are rather complicated. Recently, my son asked me, he said, how much income should you have before you hire a CPA? And I said, some. And I didn't mean that too much as a joke, but he thought it was hysterical. So I thought I would kind of use that here in the show. If you have some income, you should have a CPA. Maybe if you only make 5 or 10 grand, okay, you can do the 1040 easy, and you can do it yourself. That's fine. But anything beyond that, you really should seriously consider having a CPA. And it's not just that they're doing the work that you're not doing by keying it into a computer program, which is nice. You save that little bit of labor for yourself. But that's not bad if your taxes are real easy. But then generally the CPA is not that expensive if they're that easy because it's easy for them as well. But you often get to sit with them and have a conversation. Now, I don't really want you to go to somebody where you drop off all the paperwork and they type it in and they spit out a result and they give it back to you. That's fine, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about building a relationship, someone that you can meet once or twice a year and actually talk about things. If they come up with one idea or prevent you from making one mistake, it can pay for their fee for years to come. Just as an example, I had my own personal situation here where when my CPA gave me my 2015 taxes back a few weeks ago, he said, Phil, in this folder, I noticed that you made a $2,000 donation to some charity, and for 2012, and I pulled up your 2012 records, and this specific donation is not in your 2012 donations, and for $40, I'll just refile it for you. Okay. And so he quickly typed in a few keystrokes, charged me $40, redid my 2012 tax records, and I saved about $500, or actually I'm going to get $500 back now from the government. I would not have caught that, and if I did, I wouldn't have known that I could still refile. I wouldn't have checked. How would I check, and where would I find it? I mean, I have all the paper documents, but because he does the work, and if you're doing it on a program and you've changed computers or you haven't kept track, you might not be able to do it either. So seriously, I do recommend, and I stick by it, get a CPA to help you do your taxes. Another thing that's come up multiple times in the last week, I've had many discussions, and we will have many more, about life insurance. My advice, and you've probably heard it other places, is buy term and invest the rest. Well, I recently had a client come to me with what they called was whole life insurance. And I said, does it have a cash value? And they said, yes, it does. And they were very excited. Well, if your whole life insurance has a cash value, it's not whole life insurance. So let me back up a step. Term insurance. Think of it like your car insurance. You pay for your car insurance for 1 year. If you have an accident or a problem or need that insurance within that 1 year, you're covered. After the year is over, it expires. You no longer pay, and you no longer get the benefit. You insured yourself for the term of 1 year. Whole life insurance is designed to last your whole life. There's two primary ways that it will work. One is a single premium whole life insurance, where you might pay $100,000 and get $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 of life insurance for your entire life. You never have to pay again. You never have to worry about it. The reason it can be more money back to you is because, hopefully, in this situation, you'd be buying it when you're 25 or 30, and the probability of your death is incredibly small, and the company can take that money and invest it over decades, which is what we often talk about long-term investing, and they expect mathematically that they will make more on your money than they're going to pay out to you. But it's a very simple thing. If you want to have guaranteed insurance that will last forever, that's whole life. Another variation of that is if you make a certain amount of payment every year in perpetuity, as long as you're alive, they will also give you a fixed amount of insurance forever until you die, and when you die, they pay out. When you start adding complications, like it's part term and it's part whole, and you've got a conversion rider, and you can put in extra cash, and it also invests, usually, to me, the simplest way to find out is if it has the word cash value somewhere on the documents. If it has that, it's no longer term, and it's no longer whole, and odds are I'm not going to like it. Now, you can prove me wrong if you really want to, and that'd be great fun for us to have that conversation, but just something to keep in mind. Almost always, you're better off getting term, taking the extra money you would have paid into the insurance, and investing it. Again, we'll talk about that more in detail. I also got a little bit of an email, and the emails now come pretty fast and furious, so if I don't respond to you, it's nothing personal, and you are free to resubmit your email or send it again. I don't mean to not respond, but some days they come in faster than I can answer them. But I got another, critical email, we'll call it. It starts off nice enough. It says, technically you are absolutely right on your definition, and this is in reference to fiduciary. And that's another thing, listeners. I know that I often say the word fiduciary incorrectly. Please forgive me in advance for that. I'm going to keep working on it. We'll see if we get it better. But he's telling me that technically I'm absolutely correct. Well, it's good to know. I was pretty sure I was correct. I mean, I make mistakes, though. But the technically correct had me concerned. And then the other part has, in practice, I will argue that it's little more than a marketing gimmick. Well, I completely disagree. Now, an advisor could hold himself out as being a fiduciary and then ignore it and still take your money and sell you bad investments, and that would be potentially criminal. But the idea that it's purely a marketing gimmick is wrong and mistaken. And I thought that was particularly odd after the statement that I'm technically right. So what he's basically saying is that you're technically right, but someone could still cheat you. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Thanks for pointing that out to me. But then it goes on, and I'm not going to give you the person's name because it gives some more information here. And it says, I have been in finance since 2011. Okay, great. 5 years. Woo! Every firm is different. Okay, sure. All my clients in low-cost mutual funds. I think it means all of my clients are in low-cost mutual funds. Congratulations. I'm delighted that we agree there. Small accounts pay lower fees by being in brokerage accounts with C shares than in advisory accounts. Okay. I don't know what he means by advisory accounts, so I can't make that direct comparison. C shares, just in case you know, that means that those are mutual funds with a load. And one of the simple ways you can find out if your investments have a load is you pull out your statement that you should get at least every quarter of the calendar year, and you pull it out, and if it says U.S. stock fund, and then at the end, there is a letter hanging out there by itself. It might be a loan, it might be in quotes, it might be in brackets or parentheses. The most common one is A, and there's no legal requirement that you use these letters in this way, but there is a convention, there's a standard. If it is an A share, it generally means that there's a front-end load. Often they're 3%, they can be 5.5%, and by law they can be no bigger than 8.5%. That is on the high side, and not many funds do that, but it's totally cromulent. B shares will be sold to you as, well, technically they're a load fund, but you've mentioned that you don't want to pay any loads up front, and so the B shares don't have any load at all, but we are assuming that you're a long-term investor, which is something that I preach. And since you're a long-term investor, you're going to stay in for a long time, so it doesn't matter. So what this fund might do, instead of charging you 5% up front, it will charge you an extra percent per year, and then it'll charge you 5% to get out. And that 5% to get out goes down from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. So as long as you're in 5 years, you don't have to pay any back-end load to sell. However, the higher expense ratio remains. And then there's also C shares, which are kind of a mix between the two. No front-end load, but there is a back-end load of 1%, which may last a year or two, and it can be 2%, and it may be permanent. And there's a slightly higher expense ratio as well. So that's how the advisor gets paid. I can't complain about that too much because I get paid for giving advice, so it's not inherently bad. The problem is you are limited to selling the C shares that your company advises or recommends or has a deal with. And I pulled up this little snippet from Investopedia. And people ask me all the time, where can I learn more about investing? Go to Investopedia. It's like Wikipedia for investments. And it says, and I will quote Investopedia, the higher ongoing expenses associated with C shares make them an unappealing option for long-term investors. And I'll continue. Countless mutual funds offer both low ongoing expenses and no front or back-end loads. It is easy to avoid the drawbacks associated with C shares. End quote from Wikipedia. Now I'm going to go back to the letter, and then he says, over $50 I normally have in advisory accounts. I'm guessing he means $50,000, but it doesn't say 1,000 there, so I'm just going to add that in. The letter continues, each with the much stronger compliance. Oh, sorry. Let me start over. Even with the much stronger compliance oversight, I just can't see the fiduciary making much of a difference. Okay? Argument from ignorance. You can't see the difference. Congratulations. I continue. Quote, suitability, on the other hand, is much easier to police. Really? Easier to police? The definition of suitable is not formalized, and someone has to go through an entire legal process. It's not easier to police, and it's not policed. He continues, quote, sure, suitability and fiduciary is better than suitability by itself. Wrong. Just flat out wrong. And this leads me to believe that even though he's been in the industry for 5 years, he doesn't understand what I'm talking about. You don't take suitability and add fiduciary. They are two completely different standards. The suitability bar is very low and very easy for the advisor to achieve. The fiduciary is a much higher bar with much greater responsibility. You do not add them together. The fiduciary responsibility far outstrips and supersedes the suitability rule. So they don't get added together. One is greater than the other. He continues, it is much easier to weed out bad actors on suitability charges than fiduciary faults. I also disagree. And then we finally get in conclusion, this is from the email, so knock it off already with your grandstanding that you are a fiduciary and your show will improve a lot. Well, I'm guessing you're just going to have to stop listening to my fucking show. I don't know how grandstanding applies in this situation, but I am not going to knock off my insistence that you hire a fiduciary. I stand by it. I double down with it. If you don't like it, stop listening to my fucking show. It's not going to hurt me any, especially if you are recommending C shares to people and you don't understand the definition of the words that you want to write me a snotty email about. So anyway, that will end that part, and we're going to go into the actual investing skeptically segment for today, and that is about the cushion. The cushion is what I call the more conservative part of your investment. In the long run, stocks are the way to go, primarily U.S. stocks. From time to time, international and emerging markets, which is a little riskier side of smaller countries that have great growth potential, but often lose a lot of money, can add to that